Hello, good morning. My name is Menard Daphnis. I am the Financial Aid Director for the Miami-Dade College Wolfson campus. And this morning I'm really happy to have this opportunity to have a financial aid conversation with you. At any point during the presentation, if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. For the next half hour, we'll talk about where financial aid comes from, what financial aid is, and how you can apply for financial aid. What is financial aid? It is aid intended to assist you in paying for college. It comes in the form of scholarships, grants, loans, and even some employment opportunities. Now, you can classify those four different types of financial aid into two categories, but they primarily come from the federal government, the state, the institution you plan to attend, and basically any organization you come in contact with. Meaning, for instance, if you were to work for McDonald's, Burger King, any of those organizations could be a potential source of financial aid. But the primary sources are the primary sources of the federal government and the state. Now, remember we talked about four different types of financial aid. We talked about the grants, the scholarships, the loans, and the employment opportunities. You can group those four into two categories. You have basically those we call the gift aid types of financial aid, which are the grants and the scholarships. Grants and scholarships are basically the same, except the grants are need-based, meaning you have to demonstrate a certain level of need, and that's why when you fill out the form, the FAFSA, they ask you certain information about your financial and your parents' financial situation. Whereas the scholarships are usually based on merit, meaning you're particularly gifted at something, whether it be academics or in a sport, but it is something that you do that causes you to be eligible, as opposed to the grants, where you have to demonstrate a certain level of need. We also have the self-help types of financial aid, which are the loans and the employment opportunities. And basically what those require, the difference is that those require you to either pay them back or having to work to earn those funds. In the case of loans, those are monies that you will need to pay back with interest. And in the case of an employment opportunity, just as the word says, it's an opportunity for you to work as you are going to school and you get paid. So again, we have four types of financial aid grouped into two categories. We have the grants, scholarships, loans, and employment opportunities. Grants and scholarships, again, are free. It's funds that you don't need to pay back. And you have the self-help types of financial aid, which are the loans and the employment opportunities you may have on campus or off campus. Now that we talked about where financial aid comes from and what types of financial aid are available, how do you apply for financial aid? Now, the most important form that you will have to complete when it comes to financial aid is what we call the FAFSA. It's the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And that form is made available every year as of January 1st. And when you do a FAFSA, you do it for a specific time period. You do it for an academic year. Currently, we are in the 2013-14 academic year. So if you are to be attending school anytime during the 2013-14 academic year, you would need to complete the 2013-14 FAFSA. And for the next academic year, which will be the 2014-15 academic year, you will have to complete another FAFSA, which would be the 2014-15 FAFSA. Now, an academic year is a time period for which the FAFSA would be valid. And in most traditional universities and colleges, the academic year has 3 semesters. It begins in the fall, which is the semester that we're currently in, which is from August to December. And it's followed by the spring semester, and certain institutions call it the winter, which is from January to April. And the third semester within the academic year is the summer, and it's usually from May to July. Again, the FAFSA corresponds to the academic year. So for each and every academic year you plan to be in school, you have to complete the FAFSA. Now you can see that the form is made available as of January 1st of every year, but the academic year itself does not begin until August. And there's a reason for that. It's because the financial aid process can be a lengthy and sometimes complicated, but if you start with the process early enough, then all complications can be resolved. All issues that may prevent you from getting your financial aid could be resolved. So it's very important that you know and understand the concept of an academic year and how to apply for financial aid. Again, the form is made available January 1st, and make it a ritual for every year that you plan to be in school to complete the FAFSA, and the timeline that you are going to follow is from January to March. Make sure that FAFSA is completed, even though the academic year will not begin until August or the fall semester. And if you have to submit documents to your school for verification purposes to confirm your eligibility for financial aid, make sure by May, the latest, those documents are submitted to your school. Okay. Now, again, we'll go back to how you apply. The form you complete is what we call the FAFSA, and there are two ways you can apply or complete the FAFSA. You can either do a paper application or you can do it electronically. A paper application, as you will find out, has, doing it electronically has certain benefits as opposed to doing a paper application. If you will be doing it electronically, obviously you will have to sign the form and you will have to sign it electronically as well. So the way you do so is by applying for what we call a PIN. The PIN is a number that will identify you as yourself in the eyes of the federal government. So when you fill out the form, they will ask you, for your PIN. There's a question that says, how do you guys confirm on how much a student gets? Well, when you fill out the FAFSA, the federal government will ask you certain personal financial information as well as your parents' information if you are a dependent student. And based on that information, the federal government will run your information through a formula, and that formula will give us or assign you what's called an expected family contribution. And based on that expected family contribution, we'll know how much money and what types of financial aid you are going to get. Okay, and also the total amount you end up getting may have something to do with how early or how late you complete the application, because certain types of financial aid, as you will find out, are what we call entitlements, which means you can complete the process early or late and still receive the same exact amount you would be eligible for, whereas those financial aid types that are not entitlements are totally and in most cases dependent upon the availability of funds, and funds are usually available at the very beginning or to students who complete the process the earliest. Okay, now we'll go back to how you apply for financial aid. Again, there are two ways: an electronic application or a paper FAFSA. And again, if you will be doing it electronically, you want to be able to sign it electronically as well. And the way to do so is by applying for what we call a PIN. And if you are a dependent student who needs to have the parents' information on the FAFSA, you will also need to have one of your parents apply for a PIN as well. And that will allow you, as you complete the FAFSA, to submit the form entirely electronically without really having to mail anything. Okay? As you will find out in just a little bit, there are certain benefits to doing the to completing the FAFSA electronically as opposed to completing a paper application. Now, it needs to be pointed out that the form itself, the FAFSA, is called the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, which implies that this is really a free process. It's very important that if you are completing the FAFSA and an agency is asking you to pay them to help you with the process, that you stay away from them, because it is entirely a free process. And if you have any questions about the FAFSA itself, make sure you contact your financial aid office and not be subject to anyone taking your money without really the need for that to occur. Okay, and the site, if you will be doing it electronically, is www.fafsa.gov, fafsa.gov. Be careful not to put fafsa.com because that's a private organization that will charge you if you choose to go to that site and complete the FAFSA. Now, what are some of the things you will need to complete the FAFSA? You will need to have a valid social security number, although if you are a dependent student whose parents do not live here in the United States or do not have a social security number, you can still complete the form. And for those parents who don't have a social security number, when you fill the form out and they ask you for their social security numbers, the number you will put is 0 all the way through for those parents who do not have social security numbers, who don't live in the state and don't have, or who may live in the state but do not, in the United States, but do not have social security numbers. But for you, you will need to have a valid social security number. Also, documents you will need to have with you will be the prior year income information. Now, remember, the form comes out in January, so if you are filling out your form in January, the tax information or the tax transcript that's required for you to fill the form may not be available. Does that mean you wait until the taxes are done before you complete the FAFSA? Not necessarily. You may do an estimation of your tax or income information or your parents' income information as you are completing the FAFSA, and you may always go back and correct the FAFSA once your tax information is available. Okay, but one of the cool things about doing the form electronically is if your tax document is already submitted to the IRS, you can link you can have your information transmitted directly from the IRS to your FAFSA as you're completing it. But in order to be able to use that feature, your tax document has to have been filed to the IRS already. Okay, and as mentioned before, if you want to complete the process entirely electronically, you will have to apply for a PIN, and with the PIN you will be able to sign it electronically. However, if you don't have a PIN, because this is something I hear sometimes as well, is I don't have a PIN, I can't do it electronically. That is not correct. You can still submit the FAFSA electronically, but if you don't or your parent does not have a PIN, you can always print the signature page, which is going to be an option at the end of the FAFSA as you are completing it, because it will ask you, how do you want to sign the FAFSA? If you or your parent does not have a PIN, you can still print the signature page, sign it, and mail it in. But if you have your PIN and your parent has a PIN, then you don't need to print anything. You can complete the form entirely electronically. But again, if you or your parent does not have a PIN, you can still submit the form electronically, but print the signature page and mail it in. What are some of the general eligibility criteria? To be eligible, there is a question, and it reads, I've been denied for FAFSA recently for the first time because my mother passed this summer and the school asked for proof that I gave them but still have not been approved. How can I get this fixed? Was denied because the first time because my mother passed this summer. If your mom passed away, and the question would be, because you have to use your parents. If the mom passes away, then automatically your father becomes the parent whose information will be needing on the FAFSA. Now, if both parents have passed on, then your status will be that of an orphan, and to prove that you are an orphan, we'll need to have both of your parents' death certificates, and with that information we'll be able to do an override and classify you as still and consider you as an independent student and not ask you for your parents' information. So if only your mom has passed, then now the process will be using your father's information. But if both parents have passed on, then we'll need to have the death certificates of both parents, and we'll treat you as an independent student. Okay. I hope this answered the question. If not, then please go ahead and send me a question in terms of what parts of it was not clear. Now, what are some of your general student eligibility criteria? What you must do in order to make sure your FAFSA, when the school gets your information, is able to go ahead and process your financial aid, is you must be enrolled or accepted for enrollment in an eligible program of study, meaning you need to have a major. You need to declare a major. You need to have a goal and declare it to the institution and let them know, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, I want to be, whatever the goal is that you are in school for, you need to declare it and have it reflected on your record. You must be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. The term eligible non-citizen is a very broad category that has a number of different statuses, immigration statuses that are eligible. If you are not sure that your status is one that's classified as eligible non-citizen, please do not take it upon yourself to say you are not eligible and not apply. Always apply and allow the federal government to let us know if this is a valid status or if it's not a valid status. Now, another requirement is if you are a male between the ages of 18 and 26, you are required to register with the Selective Service, and failure to register may cause you to be ineligible for financial aid. You may not be in default on a federal student loan, or you must not owe an overpayment on federal grant or loan funds. A default would be you had a previous student loan, the time came for you to pay it back, and you never responded to the federal government, or you don't pay it back. Then what the feds will do is they'll put you in default, which will prevent you from being eligible for future financial aid until your status is cleared with them. Another key thing is that you must be making satisfactory academic progress. Every year, we have to look at your academic performance, because the way the feds look at you when you apply for financial aid is they consider you as an investment that they are willing to spend in. And if your academic status is not satisfactory, then the federal government will view you as not an investment worthy of their funds, basically. So you have to perform well academically to make sure when the next year comes around you are meeting the standards to maintain eligibility for financial aid. You also may not have your eligibility suspended or terminated due to being convicted of a drug-related offense, meaning you were caught selling drugs, or accusation of, if you have a drug conviction, that does not necessarily mean categorically that you are not going to be eligible, but that could make you ineligible or make the process a little bit lengthier for you, because you may have to fill out certain forms and go through certain programs to regain eligibility. Now, once you submit your FAFSA, when you are completing your FAFSA, the federal government has no idea if what you are reporting to them is accurate or not. In order to make sure that you are who you state you are and your information matches, they do certain database matches, meaning they go to the once you get your information, once they get your information, they check or cross-reference your information with the Social Security Administration to see if your Social Security number matches your name, your date of birth, and your citizenship status. They also check with the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that if you are not a U.S. citizen but are an eligible non-citizen, that you indeed meet the eligibility requirement for being an eligible non-citizen. They also check with the Selective Service Department to make sure you are registered with them. They also check with the Department of Justice to make sure you had not been convicted of a drug-related offense. And they also check with the what we call the National Student Loan Database System, where your information is checked, your financial aid history is checked to see if that you are not in default or owe an overpayment on any federal financial aid. Now, remember we talked about the some of the benefits to doing the the FAFSA electronically as opposed to doing a paper application. Now, when it comes to doing the application, the method you choose is of great importance when it comes to the time it takes for the federal government to issue a response to you. If you do a paper application, it takes about a month to a month and a half before they send a response to you to let you know, or to the school that you put on the FAFSA. Whereas if you do it electronically, it takes about 3 to 4 days before a response is sent to you and to the school or schools you've listed on the FAFSA. Now, I don't know about you, but I'll take 3 to 4 days anytime over 4 to 6 weeks. Also, there are certain built-in mechanisms on the electronic application when you are filling it out. If you are making an error, sometimes it will stop you and tell you to check your response because somehow it doesn't really seem to make sense to them. Whereas if you were to do a paper application, you are not going to have anyone over your shoulder telling you, hey, you may be making a mistake on this answer here. Now, once you complete the FAFSA, the feds will send a response back to you, and it's called the Student Aid Report, SAR. Both you and the school or schools you listed on the form will get that response, and that's what's going to tell us or the school what, if any, documents or requirements you need to meet to make sure your financial aid is processed. Now, there are 2 categories students can fall into once they submit the FAFSA. They can be selected for a process called verification, or they may not be selected. It's entirely a random process. If you are not selected for the verification process, then basically your responsibility will be to make sure you apply for admission at the institution and that your admission status is complete, meaning you have declared a major, your high school transcripts, your college transcripts is submitted to the school, and everything is in place, and automatically whatever you are eligible for, the school will process you without requesting any documentation from you to complete the process of awarding you your financial aid. However, you could also be selected for the process called verification, and if you are selected for that process, that means the school now will have the responsibility of collecting documents from you to verify certain portions of your FAFSA to make sure that your eligibility is being calculated on accurate and true information. 2 of the main documents that will be required will be your tax transcript as well as your parents' IRS tax transcript if you are a dependent student, and also a form called the verification worksheet. Now, another good thing about doing the form electronically is if you're doing it electronically and your taxes are done, even after you can link your information directly from the IRS to your FAFSA. And what that will do is, if you are selected for the process, the verification process, that's one less document you will have to deal with because the school will not require that you submit the IRS tax transcript. But the verification worksheet will be a requirement. Now, it's very important what is done after you complete the FAFSA. Unfortunately, many individuals have the misperception that if they complete the FAFSA, that's the end of the process. I hope you know now that this is not the end of the process. Completing the FAFSA is the beginning of the process, but if you are selected for, again, what we call verification, you will have the responsibility of submitting certain documents to your school. And the school, once we get your student aid report, which is a response that the federal government sends back to you when they get the FAFSA, will send you emails requesting certain documents. It is very important after you get your student aid report, if you have not received anything from the school, or if you do receive anything from the school, to follow up to make sure that all that's required to make sure your financial aid gets done is there. Because if you complete the FAFSA and you are entirely eligible and are selected for verification but do not submit the documents required to conduct the process of verifying your eligibility, your financial aid will not be awarded. So you may complete the FAFSA in January, but if you don't submit the documents required, we may be in August and your information is not done. So it's very, very important that you follow up to make sure all that is required is done. Now, we talked about the academic year. Hope you have a good understanding of what the academic year is, because it corresponds to when you do your FAFSA and how often you do it. The academic year is a time period for which your FAFSA is good. For instance, right now we are in the 2013-14 academic year, which began in August of 2013, and it's going to go all the way through to the summer or July of 2014. And the way to position yourself, to make sure you are given consideration for everything is, even though the 2013-14 academic year did not begin until August, the process would have started back in January if you wanted to be on time and receive consideration for everything you'd be eligible for. It would have been from January of 2013 to March. You get the FAFSA done, and by May to have submitted your all the verification documents if you were selected for verification. And the same for the next academic year, which will be the 2014-15 academic year. The process, or the FAFSA, will be available in January of 2014, and it begins with you applying between January and March of 2014 and making sure all the required documentation is at your school by May of 2014. Now, there is another question. It says, I was told that if you're a full-time student, the more money you receive. Being a full-time or part-time student, does financial aid have any effect on that, or doesn't it? Yes. The amount of financial aid you receive per per semester has to do with your enrollment level. Now, there are 4 different levels a student can receive financial aid at. You can be at less than half-time, which is 1 to 5 credits. In that case, if you are eligible for, in most financial aid, different types of financial aid require that you are at least at a half-time level. And for the Pell, there are certain eligibility statuses that even if you are less than half-time for the Pell Grant, you may be eligible for. But in most cases, you are required to be at least half-time in most different types of financial aid to receive it. Then the next level is half-time, and that's someone that would be enrolled in 6 to 8 credits. And the next level is 3/4 time. That's someone who's enrolled in between 9 and 11 credits. And full-time would be someone enrolled in 12 or more credits. So obviously, someone who's taking 12 credits, or who's a full-time student, would have a different award packet or award amount than someone who's taking 3/4 time or someone who's taking half-time. And the same goes for the difference between someone who's taking 3/4 time and someone who's taking half-time. So yes, the amount of credits you are taking does have an impact on how much you are getting. That's not to say that you need to push yourself to be a full-time student if your time is not allowing you to. Because as you can see, or as you should know, that your academic performance affects whether you are eligible or not. Because if your time does not permit you to be a full-time student, but just for the sake of getting more money, you decide you're going to be a full-time student, then that could cause you to lose eligibility for future financial aid in the future. So yes, it does. Your enrollment level does affect your the amount of financial aid you get, but you have to be cautious how your schedule is made up, and it has to be in accord with your ability to do well in all the classes you're attempting. Now, one quick thing that I'd like to leave you with, if you don't, before we part, is it's very important to complete the process as early as possible, because it can impact whether how much financial aid you end up receiving. Because the types of financial aid which are not entitlements have to do with how early you complete the process, because those funds are on a first come first served basis. I thank you for your time, and I hope this information was helpful.